wearing my mama bear hat, talking about motherhood, talking about mother, talking about breaking the false illusion around the idea or ideology that a mother can or cannot serve as a leader in society. So silly, of course, that this is even a conversation. As I begin, I want to thank my beloved benefactors, my Srila Gurudev and Srila Prabhupada, and all the Vaishnavas all over the world that are always mothering and nurturing and fathering so many souls that are in bereavement, are confused and lost and sad. And of course, because I embrace controversy with love, I'm also speaking today about that catalyst for change, also sometimes being a doorway or an entry point into community, which is very important. But what happens when we tend to lose our sovereignty in community? The reason all this came up is because a friend was over the other day. Well, there were like 3 kids over playing with Narayani, 3 friends. And one of them, the littlest one, had not seen before in the bathrooms and near the mirrors in our house, this little checkpoint. It's a little Vaishnava, a little devotee wearing tilak, and it is a checklist of the places on the body that we put tilak and honor divinity on our bodies. And it comes from this beautiful book, actually this book, Becoming Your Devotee, which is a kid's book about learning bhakti and making it fun. And this book is so cute. And this whole video is not about religion. It's not about, I just made really big eyes. It's not about religion. It's not about separation of church and state and schools. It's not even just about being a homeschooler or a world schooler, which I am and very happy to be. It is about being a mom, and it is about the fulcrum point that society has come to right now, especially in the United States, around what true service there is in being devotional leaders. Because in our Mandali group, we talk about being seekers and healers and leaders. And the parents are really leading the entirety of legacy in this world right now. So anyway, there's this little how to put on tilak. And Narayani said that comes from one of my homeschool books, which happens to be about Bhakti yoga, Bhakti being the 5th primary goal and function of yoga, of all the Vedas, and this wisdom tree of not just philosophy and cosmology of God in the form of Radha and Krishna and Shringadev and Prahlad Maharaj, these really beautiful avatars, not just of the 10 avatars of Krishna, including, the boar and the fish and Buddha and Ram. It's more about, and it's not just about Indian culture. It's not obviously just about British culture or European culture. It's a book about devotional service. So long story short, this book is so cute. Look at this. It's like practice makes perfect. And it talks about reading and chanting and hearing and worship and prasadam, which is food. So anyway, this opened up a conversation for Narayani to explain what Vaishnavism is and what it is to be a bhakti yogi or a devotee. And as I was listening to her, and of course we have many friends, because we world school, we have many different spiritual groups and cultures in our communities integrating and intersecting, because it's soul culture. And he started asking a lot of questions, and then it was like, well, who is Krishna and who is Radha? And they got into this wonderful conversation about sharing. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, I am so lucky. I am so blessed that the tenets of my spiritual practice have some, not only principles and values, of course, and a deep philosophy and culture, and there's so much history, and there's, you know, millions and millions of Vishnu worshipping devotees all over the world, but that it has tangible science in the form of not just words and scriptures, but a language. And to understand that the doorway is open to a child to learn and discover many different languages and many different cultures and many different histories, but not dogma. It's just not dogma attached. And I thought, well, is motherhood part of dogma? Like, do we as mothers have to have, you know, structure and rules in place to create a culture? And that got me thinking of how lucky we are that Bhakti Yoga is not just about the rules and regulations, which we call Vaidhi Bhakti, but there's also the spontaneous love of motherhood, of sharing, of snuggles, of hugs, of kisses, which is called Rag, sweetness. And I was thinking about that there are definitely many cultures that are missing that, and that fear-based dogmatic cultures have a lot of good in them. Like, I grew up Jewish, so whether it's Judaism or Christianity or more religious like Catholicism or ultra-Orthodox Jewish, God being in the center is always part of it, but who God is really vital. So the form that we are worshiping inside of us and outside of us in Radha and Krishna is about the relationship between them as best friends, as lovers, as intertwined, as man and woman. And there's so much about service and the service mood in Bhakti Yoga, and less about God being angry, but more about God being merciful. Less about God living and then dying, but more about God coming back era after era in different forms, specific forms, and less about God as just perfect, but more about God with his many and her many, like 64 qualities, right, of a Vaishnava, or as we emulate God, what those qualities are. So there are obviously really empowered reasons to homeschool and world school. We are part of now a co-op where it's like a private school, but less kids, obviously, more teacher per kid, parents involved. We are the board. We go over all of the economics and fiscal needs. We go over the curriculum, obviously. And it's understood that each of us are doing our own curriculum at home. It's also understood that we all are practicing some of the same values, like vegetarianism for us, and loving God and loving Mother Earth. And some folks are more based on Native American and or indigenous practices. And then there's us, the, you know, Hare Krishna devotees. A lot of us were Jewish. A lot of us came from Christianity or Europe, you know, all these different places, whether it's South America or Poland, you know, so many different cultures have come together with the one respectful agreement of being there for the children. And so we don't all have the same practices for discipline. We don't all have the same practices on how we're going about escalating and advancing our classical education. But we all know that the power is in the complexity, actually, and we're all spiritual seekers in that way. So Narayani started learning early on about, yes, prasadam, which is cooking and preparing food, prasadam, cooking and preparing food for God and serving it, about deity worship, because she's grown up with murtis in temples, which is very unusual because this isn't exactly the age for deities, but she understands what they are. She knows God is in male and female form. She knows who guru is, what guru is, how many gurus there are, what the qualities of a true guru is, that there can be, maybe she doesn't know this yet, but that, there's the early levels of this, of guruness. Like this saying we say, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jina Tasmai Shri Guru Ve Namaha. It means, thank you, Guru, for opening my eyes out of complete ignorance and taking me from the darkness to the light with your torchlight of knowledge. And there is new Guru, there is Madhyam middle range Guru, and there's Uttama Gurus that are like my Srila Gurudeva, Srila Prabhupada, or all these Vaishnavas that are leaving the planet more and more. We're having less and less, but so she knows these things. Most importantly, she understands who we are as servants and humble servants, but not brainwashed, not lacking critical thinking, not knowing we have individual nature, and that our souls are sovereign under whatever leadership we are adhering to and giving to. And I think for a lot of kids and a lot of parents, there is this deafening silence about what it is to, I'm just going to say, sweep under the rug pain, or sweep under the rug abuse, or sweep under the rug generational trauma. It's understood how hard it is to be a parent, but it's not often talked about the depths and the poignancy of the mistakes we make when it comes to being blindsided or blind or ignorant around lack of discrepancy or lack of discernment. So here's something that's coming to my mind. We have a saying, Chunada pisa nichina tarora pisa hishnuna amanina manadena kirtani asadahari. Right? So this means, may I be as humble as a blade of grass, as tolerant as a tree, and may I serve all of the Vaishnavas all over the world. And by service, that means honoring. It's not just bowing and prostrating blindly. It's being in the mood of friendship, the most important part of the spiritual practice. And being in a mood of friendship is not very easy. Not when the material world is telling us to just make more money, and making money is everything, and that you're going to have to only focus on your own family and not be paying attention to the collective. I mean, these are some of the things that I've certainly seen in programming, and I know a lot of moms have. You have programming around really good things like breastfeeding for a long time, homeschooling, but you also have rules and regulations now. Never do sleepovers, don't watch anything on the screen. There's extremes. And somewhere in this, we mothers are navigating. And if we're really to be as humble as a blade of grass and as tolerant as a tree, where is the line when it comes to spiritual advancement and motherhood or parenthood? Where is the line when another kid comes to you and asks you to share your wisdom about a spiritual path? What if the parents aren't ready to hear that? Or the child's not ready, or the parents don't want you to. Here's another one that comes up a lot in parenthood that no one talks about. Sexuality with children. What is a normal age range to start talking about the body, genetically, physiologically? When is it natural to talk about kids touching each other and loving to be naked all the time? When is it natural to start talking about dating or, marriage, having babies? When is it time to start talking about the feminine body and, how the progression happens in a female's hormonal stages and up all the way from menstruation to menopause? These are values to mothers and parents inside of their hearts that they are navigating specifically with programming and ideals from the past somewhere in their world and their collective that do not necessarily match what they want in their expansiveness psychologically to talk about and relate to with their children, what to speak of what their religion in the past and currently may be saying about it to keep the boundaries, what to speak of what their family and friends and then society as a whole and a culture is saying. So we decided very early on that love and loving and sweetness and kisses and hugs were going to be part of our love language. I'm looking at a beautiful, my beautiful world here is just incredibly gorgeous. This is my backyard. So I should have you be able to look out here. In regards to our world with Narayani and parenting, we were always and forever going to make sure that she knew she was fully loved physically and supported and nurtured in her body, which would include not shaming her if she ever got to those chubby years or phases, but also have some discipline, because we cannot have an honest relationship with ourselves as parents or each other in community or our children if we don't have some form of discipline as well. And then the nonviolence, the ahimsa part, has to go along with the purity ideals or the ideals that we have in regards to how we're going to treat each other and in society. And even that, there are these levels that I know as a mom having a girl that are just different from what it would be to have a little boy, because little boys are, hitting each other and violent and peeing all over the place. Where girls mature a little faster, but not even talking about, gender or talking about chromosomes. Generally, we all have to figure out when our boundaries are going to come up and we're going to support our kids being friends with other kids and learning from them and talking with them. And I think for me as a mom, one of the biggest learnings is about this shift that will inevitably happen of friends being more important and teaching my daughter over myself or my own voice and my husband's. And we decided early on that's what we were going to try to do by nurturing her and supporting her, but also adding discipline, which is very difficult. They say not to do that before 7, and she's turning 8 soon. So we definitely brought that in. But The other second part was that we knew her astrology. And because I'm an astrologer now, I can say that I'm doing readings. I'm really very still new at it. And yet I've been teaching for 20 years. So maybe I'm been ready for a long time. But because of that, we know that our work with our daughter is about harnessing Shakti, or harnessing her power. She's very, very powerful and very, very talented. And you could say that about any kid, but really, this is what we're dealing with. So there's a lot of Mars, there's a lot of fire in our family, and there's also this constant flux in relationship to what humility is and what Gaudiya Vaishnavism is. It's easier in some more universal homes where the tenets are first principles, like just be kind and don't hurt anyone. It's almost easier just to be an American and follow the Constitution, because the Constitution is great. You know, like, you have the right to say whatever you want, okay? Literally forever. That is really important. It's more for adults. Kids start to get curbed. Do we as mothers really want to curb our kids, mercurial mental language? Narini's learning Latin at 7. She's doing Duolingo. Like, that's just how it is. We want to expand that, but yet we want to protect her ability to do that. The right to bear arms, come on. Like, I don't even know what to say about that right now. It's so not for, it's like the language around protecting a child versus giving a child its freedom to protect themselves. Like, this is not exactly for a child, but it will be at some point. So it has to be talked about. Your own property, that one's really important. Eventually, when we get to that, or the right to press your own property, the right to not be taken by the police without asking questions first, fair trials, fair jury, all these things as it gets past number 5 and 6 in the Constitution. It's very interesting. So in some ways, if you just live constitutionally, that might be easier for a family. If you get more religious and it becomes a little bit more about specific, what we call Vaidhi actions, like I'm chanting my mantras every day, I am offering my food every day, I am singing and dancing and worshiping every day. You could follow the Quran and have those principles, or you could follow Judaism and have those principles. What I love about Bhakti Yoga, of course, is the language. And I loved learning Hebrew growing up, so I know what that is, that richness. And again, this isn't like some video about sharing bhakti for the sake of people becoming devotees. It's more about how are we going to, as parents, as mothers, continue to enrich our kids and not be afraid to make mistakes, because it's the fear of making the mistake that is coming from dogma. And it is the fear of being punished from God or from parents or from whoever. If we still have that as an adult, is that our North Compass, or is that inauthentic? Is that stopping us from letting our kids try a little bit more dangerous or even unique philosophies? So it's like all back to the conversation around that little kid asking me who Radha and Krishna are. Who is God and what are they doing? That's one of our favorite stories, pastimes to talk about, to understand who God is and what he is doing, according to the understanding of devotional yoga, which is so advanced and so expanded, but also very clear. And motherhood as a yogi, as a yogini, I will say one other thing. Yoga taught me who God was. Yoga taught me who Jesus was. Yoga taught me how to expand and contract not only my physical breath and thus heal my organs and heal my body, but to expand and contract my judgments, to understand my ignorance, my self-interest, my self-deprecation, which is really fun and light and funny a little bit, but totally self-sabotaging too much. Yoga is what helped me understand the shadow and the light, the comparison, the comparison of different literatures, scriptures. Like I started studying in classical conservatory. My minor was ethics and religion, so I always had an interest in East and West and religion, start looking at that. But when you get really into it and you learn, all there is ultimately is you and your relationship to God, you and your relationship to yourself, you and your relationship to your guru. And the first guru is mother and father across the board. And so how I am teaching Narayani to respond to me is how she's going to respond to her power. And that's because goddess is not just one form. She's not just Mother Mary or Radharani or Kali Durga or Lakshmi Devi in the form of richness and in Saraswati literature and the arts. She's not just La Luna or Black Moon Lilith in astrology. She's not just Athena. She's not just Artemis or Diana. She's certainly not just the crone. She is somehow the embodiment of all of it, all the different moods. So if mother is the embodiment of all these different moods, at least of the virgin, the hot-blooded mama, and the crone, at least those three, at least the trinity, right, of Lakshmi Devi, Kali, and I was going to say Narayani or Radharani, even like these different elements of not just Radha, but Ram's wife, Sita, the head of Dharma in that yuga, or Parvati, Shiva's wife. If the goddess is all three, as mother energy, even not just bride energy, but mother, then mother has all those parts to her. And as we grow and split our energy as mothers and start to become too dictatorial in one way or too open and letting everything in be in flow in another way, or we try to wisen up and cut off our sensual energy as a crone, we at some point must realize, I did realize that I'm all of it. And if I'm all of it, then there's definitely going to be boundaries and there's definitely going to be beauty that I'm holding at all times. Does that answer the mother question of, am I allowed to talk about God to this child? Am I allowed to tell this child what menstruation is when they ask? I mean, I think there are ages that are natural for it. Am I okay with kids going into the bathroom together, Waldorf or Montessori style? These are all very deep questions that have answers inside of you as a mother when you tap into your triggers as portals for growth, when you tap into your rage as your vitality, when you start to heal the gap of what you learned and what you were programmed to learn with who you are now naturally in relationship to divinity in form or formlessness. When you recognize that you're building a legacy with your co-partner, co-parent, family, whether that's a grandmother in some cases, or a grandfather, or your dad, or your mom, or your lover, or your non-lover anymore. Yoga explains so well and holds, even in asana, in yoga class, you could just get on your mat and sweat, and you'll understand that you are always balancing between two postures. The middle is where the flow is. The way you get into it, and the way you come out of it, and the way you breathe in it, that is where you find your discernment. It's how you get to know who you are as a mother. So tonight, I'm going to teach a yoga class. And in January, I'm going to lead my 9th yoga teacher training. And later today, I'm going to pick up Narayani and bring her to jiu-jitsu after school. And in every moment that I am not sure I'm mothering, I know that when I'm taking care of myself, I am mothering, hopefully 7 generations back. And when I take care of others and I serve in a yoga class, I am mothering. Hopefully they're mothering themselves. And when I write stories or blogs or teach in Mandali virtually or do videos like this, I am mothering the collective by showing up and being an example, messy or neat, hair done or hat on. That mama bear, that cobra, that totem that the mama is, that I am, will find some way to express itself and express that Trinada P humility without losing my sense of sovereignty. Sacred and sovereign is what we're working with. So I do hope to meet other mothers along the way. I always have before I was a mom. And I do know that some folks take pause when people talk about being moms if they haven't birthed a baby. I get why, because it's so hard and it's so painful to have a child, to lose a child, to birth a child, to raise a child. But we are mothering animals and we are mothering other people's children, coming from love first as the principle and nonviolence, truth, and a higher consciousness, a purity, a saucha. I think those principles are always the only religion that you can count on. And that's going to come from your heart and eyes being wide open and tears flowing. Thank you for spending your time listening. I look forward to listening to you because listening invites loving, and I wish to be more loving as a mom. Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sinubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.